What's poppin', y'all? One of the most legendary producers of all time, Hall of Fame producer, hip-hop legend, and visionary Timbaland is getting destroyed this week for a good reason, but also for bad reason, for none other than AI. Now, if you're unfamiliar, Timbaland has been a vocal supporter of AI, an early adopter of AI, and speaker on behalf of AI. And I think this really rubbed people the wrong way, especially artists, especially bummy artists. Yeah, a lot of you guys are bums that don't have any motion, that don't have any listeners, and you probably suck. And if you don't suck, you can't get people to listen to you. That's kind of cruel. I don't really mean that. I'm just playing it up a little bit. But no, a lot of artists don't feel a good way about this. And I understand the gut feeling, but one of the habits that I've always done, and at least for a majority of my life, adult life now, is whenever I get a gut reaction that's emotional to something, I lean back and I say, wait, hold on. Let me try to look at it from the other point of view. And it seems like AI art is, or AI music in particular, AI artists aren't a great idea. In particular, remember when they tried it with that like mecha guy a year or two ago, but it turned into this whole race thing. But Timbaland, he was an investor in Suno AI, which is an AI software that really helps people make music and produce music, and it lowers the barrier to entry. Now, the thing is, a lot of people have an issue with lowering the barrier to entry. I think when you lower the barrier to entry, it just heightens the skill ceiling. So if everyone can produce with AI now, who knows how to use the software best? It's like auto-tune, right? Like auto-tune made quote-unquote everyone able to sing, but the people that were able to use the auto-tune the best, not everybody was a T-Pain, not everybody's a Ye, and not everybody's a Travis Scott. Now, Timbaland pushed it even further, where now he's launching a new artist, and he's naming that artist Tata. So he's starting a new startup, and in this article, it says the following. This looks more like a press release, but here it says, legendary producer Timbaland has taken his fervent embrace of AI music production to a new level, launching a new AI entertainment company, Stage Zero, and an AI-generated artist, Tata, who will be dropping a debut single soon. Timbaland, who co-founded the company with his current creative partner Zaid Portillo and film producer Rocky Mudaliar, tells Rolling Stone he's had the idea for the venture since he began making music with the generative AI platform Suno last year. I saw the path, he says, but I had to wait till everything caught up. Tata is intended to be the first of many personas launched by the company, and the co-founders have dreams of the characters becoming virtual influencers and even starring in movies and TV shows. Ultimately, what Tim, and they're referencing Timbaland, is here to do is to pioneer a new genre of music, A-pop, artificial pop. So keep in mind, this is a separate genre, this is a separate identity. He's not trying to position this as a real artist. It's A-pop. It's kind of like VTubers. Like VTubers, if you guys are unfamiliar, in the streaming space, there is a VTuber, which is a virtual character that has its own design, and usually sometimes they'll use a voice changer or not, and this character live streams, and it's a person behind it, or who knows now, but before AI was really a thing, it was a person behind it. Nobody knows the person's personal name, personal information. Most people are not interested in the person's personal name or personal information. It's a genre of streaming that is massive. You have no idea, in particular in Asia. So continuing here, this is artificial pop. So I think this already gives some context. He's like, hey, this is a different genre. Says Mudaliar, who originally met with Timbaland to discuss a documentary on his career. Tata will maintain a social media presence with music videos generated by various AI video tools. Tata and other potential artists from the company will have their music created via a collaborative process between human creators and the AI music platform Suno. So here you already have a human touch, and they're using this software. Now, I don't really understand how this is like a new startup if they're using Suno, which is already a tech platform. Timbaland is a creative advisor to that company, but Stage Zero is entirely independent of Suno. Timbaland and Portillo have developed a workflow where they upload Timbaland demos created by conventional means to the platform, have Suno extrapolate upon them, and then insert human-written lyrics. Tata's voice first appeared a Suno generation that caught Timbaland's ear. It came to a point where I'm like, yo, this voice, it's amazing. He's able to capture and reuse that specific voice via the platform's Personas feature, introduced last October. We have these stacks of music that needed to be finished, Portillo says, and then it just so happened that the Tata ones were just getting finished faster. There was just something about those songs that were just like, man, this just flows. Stage Zero arrives as the music industry and artists continue to wage legal and cultural war against AI music tools. Major labels have filed massive lawsuits against Suno and competitor Udio over their use of copyrighted materials and training data, although recent reports suggest settlement settlement talks are underway. Artists including Billie Eilish and Stevie Wonder have signed open letters denouncing AI as a threat to human creativity. I completely agree with their stance on this. However, with the prior segment of this paragraph, I understand where they're coming from. And a lot of people go into this with ChatGPT as well, and platforms like OpenAI, Gemini, etc., because people are saying, hey, we wrote books and we wrote articles and we own the copyright to our books, but you used our books. And the same thing, Studio Ghibli had the same issues. So if you guys remember, it was really viral a month or two ago, maybe 2 months ago. Studio Ghibli style art, which is like very famous for movies like Spirited Away, which I still have not watched. It's been like 10 years that I'm thinking like, oh, I need to watch that movie. I really, really need to watch that movie. I'm ashamed that I haven't watched it. But people just started doing their own Studio Ghibli forms on OpenAI's image generator and things like Midjourney, and they're saying, hey, we have copyrighted material and we created this style, and you're just using the rights that we own to train your AI, which we don't profit from, we didn't give you permission for, and now you're just distributing it and profiting off of it. And I completely agree with this. The same authors have said the same thing about ChatGPT. The only thing is, when it comes to writers, for some reason, people just don't care, or it just doesn't get loud enough for people to care. But once it gets to music, everyone starts going crazy about it, which it really hasn't even caught much steam outside of the music maker community. I'm just covering it because I'm actually passionate about AI and technology and hip hop and music business, and this is just an intersection of all of them. So I think that is a very, very difficult conversation that needs to be had. I think people need to these guys need to be compensated. If their work was used to train this program or train this model, there's no other excuse. Yes, they need to be paid. Timbaland and Portillo have suggested the backlash will die down, and Mudaliar agrees. I've pronounced this guy's name wrong so many times. Listen, if you're listening to this, whose ever name this is, my mistake, man. I don't mean it. I apologize. It's going to be a bit of a battle, he says, but it's not going anywhere. We were thinking about the example of the influencer itself and how ridiculous that might have sounded 10 years ago, but we're like, nah, there's no way YouTubers can be bigger than actors, and now they're the biggest stars in the world. And yeah, some VTubers, if you told people a VTuber would be huge, they would think you were crazy just 10 years ago. But in the past 6, I would say during 2020 to 2022, that VTubers were insanely big, and some of the most super chatted YouTube accounts on live streamers on the platform are VTubers. I remember going into this VTuber's chat. She had tens of thousands of viewers. It was at least 15,000. And I'm telling you, the super chats were flying. And this isn't a case of, like, for example, I think Fresh and Fit at 1 year, they were saying that they were one of the most super chatted accounts on the platform. But there's an incentive there to super chat. Like, for instance, people get their questions read and there's like an interaction. People here, a lot of people were just super chatting, no comment on it or anything. Like maybe just for like a slight bit of attention, but you're seeing 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 here, 10, 15. I'm telling you, there was at least, if I had to count, 10 to 15 super chats a minute. Yes, that's how crazy it is. Now, back to the music point. Timbaland's been getting a lot of heat for this online. People have been going in on him. And yeah, somebody said, I think Timbo was using all those artists that submitted him music over the past 2 years to train his AI model. Holy ish, man. Wow. Now, this is incorrect because Timbaland's AI entertainment company is... Now, this is, yeah, I see what they're saying. So what Timbaland seems to be creating, this startup, is a new type of record label where he says, yo, screw the samples, screw having to deal with all of this other BS. I've got my artist under my label and I have more control, which if you're looking at it from a producer's perspective, this is amazing, right? Like how many times have you as a producer, especially if you have the skill of being an executive producer, you're like, man, getting an artist into the studio, getting them to record, like so many things are just lagging the process, their lack of motivation, whatever it may be, or even your access to a certain artist or a certain voice, but you're able to access that at your fingertips. Now, that allows you to be more creative. It allows you to be quicker. Now, the AI model, I think they're just referring to what he was using on Suno, but perhaps that's what Timbaland is talking about, where he's like, yo, I can keep more money off of music, even though Timbaland doesn't really need the money. And I genuinely think this is him trying to push forward because music does not make what it made back then. I don't know if Timbaland sold his catalog, but also like live streaming. Timbaland doesn't have to live stream. However, if he was training that artist, or he was training his model on artists and they didn't consent to that, then I do think there's an argument to be made here. And just like in my heart, in my soul, like in my principles, it feels wrong. Like it's capitalistic for sure. And some people will find a way to justify, like, yo, that's business. They're going to have to come after him in court about that, which laws haven't even really developed surrounding these things. But I would say, like, yeah, they deserve to be compensated if that's the case. But what does the compensation look like if 1,000 artists were used to train this model? And also, like, if when we listen, a lot of people that become artists, they become artists off of the influence that they got from people that came before them. It's not completely original. So how different is that from training an AI on it? I know it's different, but I'm just trying to figure out other arguments for it here. But as he continued to get a ton of hate for this, he replied with this IG reel, which is funny. I can't play the music part of it because it says Cry Me a River, but I'm just going to play you guys some of the vocals on here. I thought this was funny. However, there is an important piece of information that Timbaland posted. So he posted on his story, and this was a repost by Tumabasa. So Timbaland reposted Tumabasa. Tumabasa is an individual who is the director of Black music and culture at YouTube. And he reposted this post that said, the #1 song in the USA in 1969 was made by a band that never existed. And what they're referencing is the song Sugar Sugar. So Sugar Sugar by the Archies, that was the Billboard #1 song for the year. It wasn't a real life band. It was a fictional group that was created for the animated TV series The Archie Show, and it was based on characters from the comics. Doesn't that sound kind of like we're creating an AI character so far? You know, he said he's generating a character and it's going to be an influencer. The music was performed by session musicians and singers, not by the cartoon characters or a real touring group. The project's producer, Don Kirshner, assembled professional musicians to record the songs, and the band existed only in the context of the cartoon, and the records released under its name. So this really wasn't a song, and there are other songs that followed this, but not many. And this sounds similar to AI because it's not that the human has no input. In the article, Timbaland is saying that he's working with it. The only issue that I have with this is, like I said earlier, it's the rights. How was this trained? And I understand artists being frustrated with that, but I think Timbaland is doing people a big favor when he says that it's going to be AI. What we're going to get very, very soon is a Nav type situation. And the reason why I relay this to Nav is if people knew that Nav was Indian from the beginning and he showed his face, and I've been saying this for 8 years, he would never have blown up, and definitely not to the degree that he did blow up. But once he already blew up and then people recognize, like, oh, this is an Indian guy, they're not going to say, oh, well, I'm not listening to him now because he's Indian. Because that's a lot of cognitive dissonance to have to deal with and to have to face. But if, for example, if he was just on the come up and he had no followers, people could dismiss him for that reason and label it as something else. Like, the music's mid. I don't really like it. There's a large reason why there hasn't been a Chinese rapper, for instance, that has really, really blown up in the U.S. Even even Latino rappers, really. Like, a lot of them are regional and perhaps have a majority Latino fan base. Nav was the first Indian rapper. Like, Jay Sean was more of a pop star, and let's keep it a buck. Pop/R&B-ish, and we've had Latino R&B artists. And he looked Latino. Jay Sean did not really look Indian, or how the stereotypical look of an Indian is to someone in the American market. Now, why do I say this? Because there will come a time very soon when someone places an AI artist, and you don't know that it's AI, and you think it's a real person, and it's speaking to you, and it's touching you, and you're feeling the emotions associated with those songs. And then after a period of time, you realize it's AI. What realization does the person make at that, or what action do they take after the realization that they make at that point? Do they say, oh, this is AI, I can't listen to this anymore? I don't think that's the case, because we listen to a bunch of, like I said, a lot of pop stars or pop songs feel like AI, like Flo Rida. Does Flo Rida feel like a real artist to you? He just feels like this ethereal, like, thing. It's like this character, like a Pitbull, for instance. Pitbull is like, yeah, we know he's a real guy, but it's like, this guy's a character. Like, you hear, there are certain songs that you hear in Forever 21, maybe at Applebee's, maybe at Red Lobster, just like random restaurants. You hear them walking through the mall. You know certain songs that you've never intentionally looked for or played. Like, you'd hear the melody. Like, for example, like The Wanted, Glad You Came. And that's a boy band. I love that song, by the way. That's why I'm mentioning it. And I know that song, but I feel like a lot of you would probably hear that song and you're like, yo, I know that song. But you don't know who made it. You don't know, you've never looked it up yourself, and you don't have any investment in the artist. Well, what's the difference between that and like a Sabrina Carpenter? Yeah, they're fans of Sabrina Carpenter, but the majority of people that hear this music don't really care. They just care how it sounds, and they're not invested in the artist at all. And that's where I think like AI just makes it easier, because if we have these generic, and I don't mean to disrespect them, because I do think pop music is great, but you have these artists who the large majority of their listeners are not invested in them. They hear the song, they're like, oh, that's a cool song. They may never go to a performance. They just consume the music. They'll listen to it on the radio or wherever else. I think that's very different, and that's why maybe like hip hop has such a angry reaction to AI. Because with hip-hop, like, you're kind of a fan of the storyline. Where did this artist come from? Are they an industry plant or not? That's not something that really goes into the mind of someone that's listening to a Sabrina Carpenter fan, or listening to Sabrina Carpenter, or any number of other artists that are pop stars. And you want to know what's going on with the artist. Like, how invested is the artist? Is the artist really living their lyrics? That's another aspect to it. So I'm waiting for that moment in particular. What I think Timbaland is doing is innovative. I think it's cool. And with this AI argument, it's all a matter of taste. Like, if you have good taste, then you will be able to make good stuff. And people that don't have good taste should be concerned. But also artists that may have a fear of, or like this anxiety that their work is going to be devalued or anything of that nature, I don't think you should be worried. And here's why. We've had machines, we've had sewing machines, we've had machines that make stuff from scratch. We've had factories for what, over 100 years? Do you think that at that time people are probably like, yo, I'm handmade, like my business is going to go out of business? What's ironic is that handmade goods, if you have a label of handmade, that's justified to charge more, yet it takes longer to make. You can make less of them, and the machine, in this case what would be AI, even does it better. But there's like a certain character that's in a handmade thing. And especially if you know every single product is different, there's a certain unique aspect of it that makes it more appealing, and why you charge more for it, or why people are able to charge more for it. And you feel like you're supporting an actual person. And I think the same thing is going to happen with music. There's going to be verifications on, hey, this is verified as a human artist. And I think you'll have the option. So I don't think they should impose it, because I think being able to portray an artist as a real person, but them secretly be AI is a form of performance art, which I think should be allowed. However, I think there should be an option for artists to like verify themselves. You know how like you send Meta like your real name or whatever, and they give you a verification badge, so that people that are looking for music, they're like, oh wait, this is a real artist, and this is no AI involved. And I think that will be a mark of not necessarily just status, but it will be a distinction that holds higher value over time the more people use AI. It's almost like instruments. You're like, yo, this guy can play all of these instruments. You don't need the instruments to produce anymore. But when you hear that about an artist or a musician, you're more impressed. You want to support them more. You want to go see them live because they're actually going to play the instruments. That's why I went to see Anderson .Paak live. I was like, wait, hold on. This guy plays drums. This guy actually does this. And I went to see him live, and it was a phenomenal experience. And I would go to see him live every single time now. So that's where I think about this. I think people are a little bit misinformed with what Timbaland's doing. I think they're quick to hate. And we saw this same panic when autotune was first catching steam. And nothing's really changed. The cream will always rise to the top. And that's how I see it with AI as well. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see you on the next one.